Good day to you. As I was following the path towards the understanding of the world and understanding why some people look alike, whilst others drastically differ between themselves, well, somewhere on this path there sprang an idea of the hybrid nature of modern humanity, meaning modern people are different and those differences stem from various people having different origins. The color of the eyes, hair, skin, the structure and shape of the skull, skeleton, the speed and quality of metabolism, the composition of blood and response to external stimuli. All of these traits and characteristics differ among human groups and populations, and these differences are determined by the inherited genetic information, as on the physical level, so on the field levels. This means that a Swede, for example, even on Mars will always stay a Swede, and his ultimate chance of changing something in his physiognomy is cosmetic surgery. Only in his hairs, after many generations, the bones and muscles can slightly diminish as an adaptation to Mars gravity. But even after a million or even a billion years, the Swede's hairs will stay blonde and blue-eyed with a typical Swede look. If we are to look further into time, the only ways to considerably influence and change the genotype and phenotype of those people, say for them to Martianize, is either for the first Swede to marry and have children with a Martian woman, either during many generations to expose the genome of that population to certain modifying factors, shortly to both gene engineering and selection. As in the first so as the second case, the results will still differ. Why so? Because the influence of the environment on living beings mostly decides whether the organism or kind will survive or perish. That is, what the environment does is natural selection. This environment's influence is much less concerned with creation of mutants by magical means, who appear all at once in a completed form without any intermediate links. This influence of nature and environment only helps and directions the on and off switch of certain already existing traits and features, which the genome of an organism already possesses. As previously was said, the great diversity of human phenotypes is explained by the simple fact that many races mix among themselves, creating a variety of possible combination of traits. Believe me or not, that is for you to decide. If you still wish to investigate further, on my channel you will be able to find the previous videos, among which there is one on evolution theory and anthropogenesis, with facts, examples, and funny pretty pictures. So what about the sixth race? Because Elia said there were 5 initial races. Well, that is true, but as it was impossible to explain all the diversity of phenotypes among modern people, of the traits which I linked to the red race, I did a full recap and revision of the whole thing, and the results came out surprising. New facts pointed out the existence of a sixth initial race, a race which I initially did not recognize. Besides this fact, but along the journey there appeared a dim concept that the world's perception and interaction with it, or namely the psychological and personality portraits, also make a part of the genetic inherited material, and they are unique to each race in part. Maybe this will turn out to be the subject of the next video, but for now let's stick to the sixth race. Here is what came out as the photocomposite of the red race after the previous video came out, when I still thought the number of initial races was 5, and here are some typical examples of that phenotype among modern people. But this narrative did not explain a few contradictory facts, contradictory with the 5 races model. Fact number 1. Why do some reds possess an almond eye shape while others have big round entire looking eyes? Because of the hanging upper lid. And no, the almond eye shape is not a feature of the yellow race as some may think, simply because this shape is met among the reds much more frequent, and in lots of those cases we do not have even a slight hint of an yellow admixture in the genome. Fact number 2. Why do some reds own a small, atrophied and receding chin, while other reds have a regular, medium-sharp chin? The fairy tale about that small receding chin is a direct consequence of ancient half-men cooking and eating soft food. That being the case, the atrophy of the chin and jaws sounds very unlikely to be true. I do not have the time to go deep into the hows and whys of this, but here is what it can be said about it in a few words. If this would have been the case, we'd have to observe 50 to 70% of the human population to have a reduced and small chin, which we of course do not. And even for this process to happen at the scale of a kind or a population, that transition from a heavy or even a regular chin to an atrophied chin as seen in some individuals would take not one but many more millions of years. Fact number 3. The ectomorph paradox. Many reds usually are above average height, with a well-developed musculature, but what we see in reality is that among many Europeans we have people below average height who have a very poor developed musculature, and no matter how much effort they would put at the gym, they won't reach an athlete body shape. What else is interesting, among these kinds of people it was observed that some of them completely lack some groups of muscles, or those groups are atrophied to such an extent that they look completely to be missing. And all of this is, of course, genetically inherited. Fact number 4. The phenomenon of red hair and sun-sensitive pink skin. These traits, which are common among modern people, had a poor origin explanation within the five races model. If we are to combine all these facts together, an interesting synthesis comes out. All of these traits combined gives us a type of people which are real and here for us to observe. Big, round, tired-looking eyes, with an atrophied receding chin, underdeveloped musculature and below average height. Two of these traits follow the atrophy direction, which can't be taken for coincidence already. Interesting is the fact that among people showing the above-mentioned features also is common the burr, meaning they can properly pronounce the letter R. The burr comes out as a consequence of the underdeveloped throat muscles, that being the reason behind the infant burr which commonly disappears in most children before reaching the age of 5 to 7. Atrophy again. Having already three major features following the atrophy line, all of which are inherited, we are facing either a discovery of a very ancient line of reds which diverged from the initial stock a very long time ago and, quite strangely, passed through a general process of morphological atrophy, while the others did not, either, which is most probably the case, we're facing the discovery of a total distinct, specific, and unique race in its own way. Following next, by using the methods which were described in the previous videos and in the book, the other traits of the sixth race were brought to light. Curly red hair, a beaked Roman nose, a narrow oblong face, small mouth, a receding atrophied chin, body hair is present, ectomorph body shape, underdeveloped and partially atrophied musculature. This phenotype is commonly met in Western Europe, but especially popular among the aristocratic houses of Europe, Asia, and Africa, with small exceptions. And other peculiarity, among people included in this phenotype, often it was observed the trait of the sun-sensitive skin, meaning their skin would easily burn at ultraviolet exposure. Also frequently, their skin color was pinkish gray. After some digging into this, here is what I found. It so happens that today in the world there live around 9,000 people with blue blood. In their blood, the hemoglobin molecules don't have iron atoms in the center, but copper atoms. which makes it hemocyanin already. The good part is that such a blood is literally immune to almost all known infections. But the downside is that the hemocyanin's capability of transporting oxygen is 5 times less than that of the hemoglobin. This means people with such a blood might have an oxygen problem during intense physical exercise. And there's more. The pinky skin, along with the blue-violet hue of the blood, give the outer look of the skin to be gray. Resumed, what we have for now is atrophy of musculature, absence of sexual dimorphism, meaning morphologically the body of a male does not differ from that of the female except the sexual organs, the atrophy of masticatory and speech mechanisms, unfit metabolism for a prolonged physical activity, sunlight intolerant, pale gray skin. This list of features points out the fact that their usual environment is either a megapolis without any ecological balance, covered by smog at most times, either that is a completely closed environment, detached from nature and natural sunlight. The polluted environment and the absence of the contact with nature would have brought such a kind to extinction, because a gradual lowerment of the immune system, making the bodies of such individuals an easy target even for the most docile infections. Also, in such cases, it is hard to speak about a probable organic, ecologically sustainable agriculture. Most likely, this race was accustomed to take their nutrients of food with soft texture, like that of a potato puree. In this light, it is perfectly understandable why their masticatory system gathered such level of atrophy. We know by our own experience that an average megapolis inhabitant stands a long way from being an athlete, and if we are to add to this the physiological downside of having hemocyanin as an oxygen carrier in the blood, it becomes clear that to survive, these people would have to avoid heavy physical exercise. Here are the results of the photocomposition. In this case, for example, the alpine type is the mix of the white and the gray race, and almost all Mediterranean types fall under the mix of reds and grays. You can determine by yourself the makeup of any type simply by following the instructions given in the previous video and by having at hand the photocomposites of the 6 initial races, which stay at the origins of modern human populations. That's all for today. Have a good one.